few questions for you, actually. I know CJ's taking up all my time for questions. Freaking CJ. But no,
CJ.
One thing, the big conversation is the big tech argument. And my thing is, how do we handle that without being authoritarian? Because as you see, Facebook, all of them, right now they're censoring entire sides of the political aisle. I mean, I think PragerU this morning just had their whole account banned. Steven Crowder got kicked off of YouTube for following their policy. So what's the best way to handle that type of situation without being authoritarian and saying,
well, you're going to be utterly shocked by my answer. But the problem here is government. So we have to look at what's happened here. This did not happen in a vacuum. Facebook did not one day wake up and say, you know what, I think I'm going to start censoring everything. YouTube did not wake up one day and say, I'm going to start censoring everything. We actually got a little glimpse of this a couple times in the last year. One example was right before the Capitol Hill protest, or actually just either right before or right after the Capitol Hill protest. Facebook, which had been doing a lot of political censoring, Mark Zuckerberg gave a couple interviews where he said, you know what, I think that we probably need to rethink what we're doing here with censoring political content. I don't think we should be censoring political content. Here came all the corporate media hit pieces. Here came the threats of congressional investigations. Here came all the threats of regulatory actions. What do you mean you're going to let the white supremacist neo-Nazis say whatever they want? He wasn't saying he was going to let stormtroopers onto his site. He was saying we need to probably be backing off a little bit and letting people talk more. Then the Capitol Hill protest happened. Or this happened right after I honestly don't remember. It was either right before the Capitol Hill protest or right after. But it happened all around the same time. And so all of a sudden, here came all these media pieces. The main source of all of the content that was happening and all the coordination was happening on Facebook and Facebook Messenger. Well, of course it was. Facebook owns social media. They're like 70% or 80% of the social media market is Facebook. Of course, most of it happened there. How is that even a headline? But those headlines came out because Mark Zuckerberg said, maybe we ought to let people say stuff, right? Not hate crimes or threatening to murder people or anything, but, give uncontroversial opinions, right? So all of a sudden, Mark Zuckerberg said, well, actually, I think we just need less political content. I don't think people want to talk about politics. And now here came this next round of things. That happened because of government. Similar thing with the GameStop thing, right? So, Robinhood didn't just do that. They didn't just start not allowing the Wall Street bets people from betting. They got threats from New York regulators. They got threats of investigations from Liz Warren and other people. Then all of a sudden they went, okay, all right, well, yeah, I guess not. Now we had another example of that last year. We had a company that wasn't even based in the US and their terms and conditions were really, really loose. It was called TikTok. Okay? Or as the federal government called it, the Chinese Communist Party's spy organization that if you even join it, you're a traitor to this country. Do you know what proof they presented? Me neither. They presented nothing. They just said it was. And they presented zero proof. And because it was coming from the Trump administration, here came Fox News, and here came OAN, and here came our standard bearers for liberty in Newsmax and everyone else, doggedly following the government neocon propaganda that the TikTok was spying on us, and they had no proof of it. In fact, we had plenty of circumstantial evidence that it wasn't happening. They were the preferred platform of the Hong Kong protesters, and the Hong Kong protesters were among some of the most tech savvy out there. If they had thought for even a second that TikTok was being a spy organization for the Chi-Coms, they would have never used it. So there's one powerful piece of evidence. Here's another powerful piece of evidence. The servers that they use, because they are a Chinese-based company and they're required by law, their Chinese social media server has to be based in China and monitored by the Chinese government. They had a completely separate set of servers for literally every other country on earth, which was based in Singapore, which is where most of Facebook servers are, and Microsoft servers are, and Google servers are. Everyone has servers there. They are no more or less open to spying by any government, including our own and the Chi-Coms, than anyone else is. But that was enough for the federal government to say, we're going to ban TikTok unless they get bought by an American company. What would that change? Same dictatorship. same servers, same policies, same everything, but just get bought out by big tech. So they get bought out by Oracle. Suddenly their terms and service look like every other one of the major big tech platforms. Suddenly they're getting just as censored as everyone else. And now all of a sudden TikTok isn't the Chi-Coms anymore. It's all coming from government. When you get rid of the government threats of force, when you get rid of the restrictions and regulations that make it increasingly difficult for emerging companies to come up and challenge the existing status quo of companies like Facebook did, like YouTube did, like Google did, like Amazon did, when you get rid of that stuff, now we have an actual free market. If you think that having government decide what is or is not allowed on social media explicitly without any kind of middleman is the way to fix this, I've got news for you guys. Look at every time governments decided whether or not something's allowed to be said. Look at what they're doing even now with what little controls they have. The answer is always less government. And there is no Laffer curve on that. There is all the way to the bottom. The answer is always less government.